Buenas and Afade, and good evening. This roundtable oversight hearing conducted by the Committee on Education, Public Safety, and the Arts is called to order at 6:07 Chamorro Standard Time after some difficulty. Notice of the hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets on June 22nd, 2023, with the second notice provided on June 27th, 2023. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website and the Government of Guam Public Notices portal. This evening, the committee is holding an oversight hearing on the Guam Department of Education's compliance status with Public Law 37-4, an act to renumber and amend subsection 4721 entitled Variance, and to add a new subsection B to subsection 4719, all of Division 1, Article 7, Chapter 4, Title 26 of the Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations relative to updating sanitation regulations to promote health and safety at Guam Department of Education public schools. I'd like to again welcome my colleagues joining us today, Senator Frank Blas Jr., Senator Joanne Brown, and Senator Tello Taitagui. I'd like now to go over the general rules of conduct. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking and shall state their name for record-keeping purposes. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or individual testifying is not permitted. The chairperson of the committee may order the removal from a hearing any member of a legislator in Guam who fails to observe proper decorum pursuant to the 37th Guam Legislature standing rules. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in the removal from the hearing by the host. And of course, the reason we call this oversight hearing is to check on the status of the Guam Department of Education with compliance of Public Law 37-4, especially considering the passage of Typhoon Mawar. And that being said, I'd like to recognize Acting Superintendent Judy Wampat. It is her second to last day here as the acting superintendent, so I thank you so much for being present. And if you can just go ahead and get into your presentation, ma'am. Thank you.
Senator Barnett, Senator Brown, Senator Taitagui, and Senator Blas. Buenas and Hafade. It is with a heavy heart that I submit to you my final update. I do want to take this opportunity to thank the board for this, to be able to serve as the acting superintendent during the last 5 months. It has been a challenging, but also rewarding and inspiring experience for me as a longtime educator and public servant to be able to see the department at this level and to witness all the great things we have to offer our students and the enormous potential they all have as our future leaders of Guam and our region. As those who have come before me have said, the GDOE has an incredible collection of dedicated, hardworking, compassionate, and skilled personnel at all levels of the organization. Our students and our island are fortunate to have them as part of the GDOE, and I am truly humbled and honored to have been their leader for even such a short time. With that, I would like to offer you my updates for the past month and the major areas of focus that I will be covering this evening. Senators, I'd like to also introduce to you the new superintendent, Dr. Kenneth Swanson.
Today, welcome, Mr. Swanson.
I also have with us this evening the board chair, Dr. Okada, and our other board member, Angel Sablan. With me here to provide any additional information that you may need with the finance deputy, who is Franklin Cooper Nurse, the CNI deputy, Mr. Joe Sanchez, the F&M supervisor, Mr. Phil Tovis, our lead person for recovery, Mr. Chris Anderson, and newly appointed FEMA lead person, Mr. Ike Santos. Senator, I have prepared a PowerPoint based on the questions that you have messaged me that you would like for us to cover. And there are 6 of them, and if I may, and I'll just go over it, and you'll find it on your the headings of the PowerPoint. One will be the list of schools according to the tiers that we have created. Two, the status of all bids, IFBs, RFPs. Three, contingency plans for closure. Four, the status of our FEMA engagement. Five, status of compliance efforts, which is the Public Law 37-4. And six, any barriers or hurdles that we need to clear. So you all have a copy of our PowerPoint. Oh, still not close enough? Okay. So they're broken in 4 areas. The GDOE concurrent operations. 1, shelter management and transition to Tier 3 shelters. 2, typhoon recovery for schools and central office. 3, the maintenance of regular operations. And 4, major activities moving forward and what our next steps are. Oh, so you're kind of behind. Again, next one. Okay. So thank you to all the staff and personnel from the schools and all the other government agencies who supported and continue to support the shelterees during and after the typhoon, either at our schools or in the Emergency Operations Center, and now in the Tier 3 shelters. It is truly an example of how the government and community can come together to support our friends and families in need. As a department, we are proud to take on this role and once again, thank all those who have supported our work. So what is the status of power, water, phone services, landlines, and internet services? As you can see, we have 41 schools, but 25 of our schools have power, which is 60%. For water, 39 of our schools have water, which is 95%. For landlines, 16, and that's 40%. And internet services, 15, which is 35%. And the internet, of course, is critical later in our conversation for any alternative to having face-to-face. The status of public health inspections. 12 schools were scheduled. 5 of those have been completed. So previously inspected, and I know you've heard this, is Southern High School, which received a D for demerits, and Ocean View Middle School as well, got a D. This summer when we started to do the inspections, there are 10 schools. They weren't able to finish all 10, but they started out with Atacao Elementary School, which was very disappointing for us because it is a leased school, and they receive a grade of D. In Ilahan Elementary School, a C, great for Ilahan. JFK High School is pending a report from them, and this week they have gone to Melesu Elementary School. Then all the other schools from 5 on to 10 will be occurring. And as you know, it would take basically 7 days to do a complete inspection and an additional 2 more days to be able to write up the report. So in preparation for public health inspections, that means during the pre-typhoon, and if you recall, the sanitation program had started basically in December 22. DOE and our DOE facilities and maintenance, our district and school personnel, that means our school safety liaisons. There are 2 safety liaisons per school. They were trained by public health on the application of public health criteria and conducting a self-inspection. So all schools have those 2 safety liaisons to support this self-inspection. April is when, of course, the law came into effect. So all schools conducted self-assessments between January 2023 to April 2023 and submitted the results to facilities and maintenance and our capital improvement plan for review and action. On that same month, school then needs were classified into 3 tiers, and you had asked for us to send you our plan on the 3 tiers to help identify and assign responsible individuals to determine what their priorities are, how do we allocate those resources, and then what timelines are we to set for those schools. So from April then to today, our facilities and maintenance management prioritize the school work based on factors including the public health inspections, the number and the type of demerits from self-inspections, and the severity of the tier needs. Therefore, what that means is that the schools with the highest demerits, then those are the ones that we have set as our top priority to follow through with. Ongoing school-based work, our schools continue to work on Tier 1 items. So to kind of explain what those three tiers are, is that those three tiers have been classified in terms of our facilities and maintenance needs. So Tier 1 basically means that these are work that could be handled by the school level, by the school staff. What we would do is that we had put out open purchase orders to be able to get supplies and materials to support that work at the schools. Tier 2 gets a little bit more difficult. That means the work is larger and might require then the need of assistance now from our facilities and maintenance staff, or even outside of the office to get government agencies to assist. 3-tier, which is the most difficult, in which we can't do it ourselves, we can't do it even with the laborers, our workers that we have at facilities and maintenance. So that means then that this would have to go out in the form of, which we consider capital improvement projects, that would have to go out to bid. The typhoon recovery for schools and public health inspections to be continued. So our schools provided the initial damage assessments last Friday, May 26, to provide a quick overview of the damages to our campuses. And our schools continue to input the same items into the Munis system so that we can track the work requests that are coming in from the schools. Our schools also submitted what we call PDAs, which are the preliminary damage assessment, this last Friday, June 2nd, with a more detailed information to facilities and maintenance. Our schools continue to submit weekly school readiness reports to the superintendent's office, the deputy superintendents, the division heads, which include specific items such as, and I discussed this earlier, water, power, internet, and top 5 facility items that will prevent schools from opening. And we're not giving you specifics in terms of what those 5 facilities are because it will vary from school to school. So all these 3 sources are reviewed by facilities and maintenance. We classify them and place them under whatever tiers there are, whether it's 1, 2, or 3. And that's how we're able to organize and prioritize the work that needs to be done and any request for services or labor to be done at the schools. Now, there are the top 10 areas that has been identified. These came from the schools. Remember, they submitted their preliminary damage assessment. Mold growing is a major problem for all of our schools. And so this is an issue that Chris was able to put in the DLAN as a top priority for all of the schools to be addressed. The second item is the gate entrance. As you know, our fence line are either damaged from down trees or actually flattened by the typhoon. So the first, when you consider mold, we're talking about the health of not just our children and the staff who are there. Then when you go to entrance, the gate, the fence lining, is that then it's the security of our schools now, because we are already experiencing and have reported to the police that there have been break-ins because the fence are all down and it's just open to the entire community. 3, exterior doors that were blown down, blown in, and damaged. 4, roofing, major leaks in our concrete roofs, our tin, wooden roofing also blown off. The shutters that we have for the schools that were hardened, even for shelters, are partially or completely blown off. 6, our floor tiles soaked due to flooding and causing bubbling. because we couldn't go in. There's no power, no water. We can't even go in to address this. And the longer the water would sit on our tiles, then they start to pop. 7, the ceiling tiles that got wet, and many of them are already beginning to fall. And this is a concern for us because this is also part of the public health inspection. 8, windows blown in or broken due to objects or wind pressure. 9, interior doors, wet, damaged, and some of them are difficult to also close or open because of the expansion. 10, debris throughout the campus needing assistance for removal. And when I gave you earlier, when I said about how bad the mold situation is one of the schools that was really problematic for us is Simon Sanchez High School, because as you know, there are no windows, it's completely enclosed, it's difficult to go in to assess. All of the walls are plywood or a gypsum board, so that makes it really hard for that particular school. There's the roof, the walls, the interior damaging, faulty wiring. Those are major problems that we found there. So to continue on their tier work, so as you know, tier 1 schools continue to address these matters as best as they can and have requested the needed self-help supplies and materials from F&M. And to also let you know then is that the procurement office was able then to cut all of the procurement specifically at $240,000 each for plumbing, electrical, and carpentry materials. And then to also put out another $150,000 for school readiness materials that the facilities and maintenance then will be able to provide the workers to go out to help the school. So remember, like tier 1, what schools will need would be like mops, brooms, buckets, gloves, things of that nature primarily for sanitation, cleaning. Then tier 2, which is where now the facilities and maintenance workers, would be able to have the hardware that they're going to need to go in to make the repairs at the schools. So the next, there's the status of our tiered work. So for tier 2, our facilities and maintenance staff continue to systematically address the work requests in this category, and the team continue to help and are assigned to a pre-inspection, a post-inspection, post-typhoon, and rapid response daily tasks. So all these we have done early in the year when you had asked us how are we addressing this. So we were able to create this rapid response team, especially after working hours, should there be a break-in or a water leak, and then the team will go out to the schools to address those rather than waiting for the next day. Support then is currently being provided by the Governor's Debris Task Force, which includes Dominic Munia, who is from the Port Authority. He was specifically told to help the schools, Guam EPA, the Department of Agriculture, US EPA, FEMA, and Army Corps of Engineers. So they've all been very supportive. The Army Corps of Engineers have provided training to all 41 schools on debris management and the types of debris streams that can be supported by the mission. It's important that we actually separate these out, the green waste from metallic waste to construction materials to white goods. And so that takes us down then to now that the Guam National Guard has actually been tasked to help remove green waste, metallic waste, construction or demolition material, white goods. We anticipate that the estimated date of completion to do this, primarily green waste and metallic, will be on July 30th. So we're, of course, now we need to be able to work with others in terms of the construction materials, the demolition materials, white goods. Those we need to work with other agencies to remove them. I'd like to also say that part of that gathering of damaged materials are like our collateral equipment that got wet, desks, and chairs, because now you have this pressed wood desk And so those are damaged. So what we're doing is that I've actually contacted also a Judah Foundation who's really excited about this. She has Carlotta, former Senator Carlotta Leon Guerrero, always works very closely with Matson or the military. They provide the containers. They load it up from all of the collateral equipment that we have at our schools that have been surveyed already, and then actually ship them out to help our brothers and sisters throughout the region. So they would be helping us as well for that. U.S. EPA is responsible for removing e-waste and hazardous materials. And I have to say that we're really very happy as well for this, because early in the year or throughout the year, principals have been confiscating, like for example, e-cigarettes, paraphernalia of the vapes and e-cigarettes. So they're now willing to be able to take that off from our hands. The status of Tier 2. Now, DLAN tickets, this is where we input into this system any support that we would need. And so, like for example, DLAN 11625, that is strictly for mold mitigation. And just to let you know that we were able to get a price quote, and it's anywhere between 6 million to 13 million for mold mitigation. DLAN 11964 is to replace or repair our school perimeter, our cyclone fencing. Like I said earlier, that is also really important for this, our safety of our schools. DLAN 11966. Now we're going to need these additional skilled laborers to help us for facilities and maintenance support that we just don't have in terms of our workers, like skilled laborers, like electricians and carpenters and plumbers, welders and so forth. So the DLAN ticket to be submitted for schools without water and power also submitted, so that the respective agencies can provide assessment of the situation and provide us with a timeline for restoration. So when we were collecting all this information for our preliminary damage assessment, we also provided a cost in terms of what it would take then to replace all these, repair all these, or restore. And these are like doors, windows, carpets, collateral equipment, air conditioners, equipment, fencing, all that, just that came out to $14,412,537.33. And for the mold mitigation, like I said earlier, is between 6 to 13 million, depending on, and of course, if the days continue without us doing it, then the percentage of the mold, the increase of the growth will continue to get worse. Tier 3, the procurement of vendors for capital improvement projects, those are CIP projects, is ongoing and includes work that addresses air conditioning, roofing, canopies, walkways, restrooms, and electrical. Those are for the 35 schools that we originally had informed you of, and the monies that we're using for that particular IFB is from ARP. So, let me see. We have a breakdown also, separately that I actually received today from Chris. The DLAN ticket 11964 is for the repair and replacement of school perimeter fencing. DLAN ticket 11966 are school labor facilities, and 11967 are vehicle manpower support, and schools for double session sharing of school facilities for the new school year. So all of these, the DLAN numbers that I mentioned have been submitted in terms of getting assistance for mold mitigation and fence lining. Now,
I'm sorry, could you repeat what you said about double session? I didn't catch that.
well, I will go, I'm going to do that next. Okay. So, but in order to do that, of course, we have to make some determination for readiness, for opening. And so what we decided to do, as educators, we like to do these things, tier 1, 2, and 3 for work that needs to be done, tier 1, 2, and 3 for damages, tier 1, 2, and 3 for shelters, shelteries. So now we have another one, and it's an easy one, and it's color-coded. So the 3 classifications for readiness is that the green will be based on an established criteria that will be determined, that then we will know if the school is projected to open on time, and August 7th is the date, and no more than 2 weeks late, okay? The yellow will be based on established criteria where the school then is projected to open 3 weeks to 2 months late. And then the red will be based on established criteria that the school is projected to need 3 or more months to open. Now, I'm not able to tell you which schools there are. We have some ideas, like, for example, I told you earlier, like Sanchez. That is definitely one school that we know that has, and I shared what, the problem is for that particular school. So I can safely say is that we're looking at that school now to do a double session, okay? Specific procurement updates that should ask for, because the custodial IFB, the vendor has been awarded and the PO was cut, and our vendor is Guam Cleaning Masters, and they've already started working in our school since May 15th. And what they've done is that they delivered all the supplies to the schools to stock them up with toilet paper, paper towel, hand soap, other cleaning materials that they would need. And I know one of our board members was concerned about going to one of our schools and not finding any of these in the restrooms. And this is part of the contract that now these Guam Cleaning Masters must provide to our schools. Ground maintenance IFB, that contract has been awarded and a PO was cut. And the 2 vendors is Guam Cleaning Masters and JJ Global. Grass cutting then started on April 1st by these 2 vendors. The GW Gym, the contract was awarded, the PO was cut. For the structural repair of George Washington, the contractors provided a performance bond, and that's going through the permitting process. The awarded contractor for this project is Bascon Corporation. Air conditioning, IDIQ, the facilities and maintenance and procurement team are currently evaluating the technical bid of this IDIQ. We have received 4 submissions from interested bidders. So once the technical bid is evaluated, then we will be able to move to the next step and award the contract to the lowest bidder. FB Leon Guerrero Renovation, IFB, was issued on May 19th of this year. The project's currently out for bid with the submission date for bidders, which is due July 28th of next month. Though Typhoon Maywar caused additional damage to the school requiring additional work, the type of work needed has already been identified in the existing scope of work, thus needing no changes to procurement documents. However, the school administration wants to put in additional requests for facility upgrades, and that all depends on funding priorities. Simon Sanchez, condition and readiness. Due to Typhoon Maywar, additional concerns have been raised about the condition of the school and the suitability for occupancy for this school year. So we are currently discussing with the school leadership the likelihood of the school having to go in double session for the new school year 23-24 and subsequent years until the new campus is completed. We were informed that it may take anywhere for construction 3 years, but then the process prior to that may actually go up to 4 years. So that's why we have to look for something more long-term double session in a high school, so to make sure that they have common campus needs, curriculum needs, not middle and high together, but more high school to high school. Ocean View Middle School, due to additional damage and work that needs to be done in the campus, Ocean View Middle School is moving to Southern High School for the next school year. More discussions will need to take place to determine the long-term plan for the campus. No final decision nor recommendation has been made regarding the long-term plan for the current campus. I'd like to also let you know that I actually visited both campuses right after the storm. I also visited just this morning Southern High School and met with the assistant principal, Ms. Castro, and the principal of Southern High School, Mr. Mano. I visited the classrooms and looked at it. They have been stripped, mopped, waxed, and buffed, many of the classrooms. The restrooms that you saw for the pictures all circulating, I want you to know, is that the reason why they couldn't go there because of the executive order that prohibited water blasting and the use of excessive water while the island was still not fully restored. It has been clean. I have a photo that I can show you because I took the exact same photo of the places that you have received those photos. I have to say that the staff of Southern High School has been working diligently, very pleasant, happy, willing to help. The assistant principal of OMS, also the staff is at their school packing up all of the materials. The teachers are happy. They saw the classrooms. Their classrooms are definitely much bigger, larger in the sense of space than what they currently have. And we ask that the custodial services also report to Southern High School to be able then to help clean the campus. So they're well on their way. And if you see debris outside and grass and all that, all those, of course, will be swept, and the same thing to be piled separately. So I've honestly, when I was talking to them, it's a really good move. They're happy about it. There's so many benefits as a result of this, is that when you really look at it, there would be no crossing of our children. When the children go to lunch first, the gates then can be shut in the middle school, so there won't be that closing. The hours in which the children come in, the high school students, and by the time they start classes already, the middle school will be just coming in. So you're not going to have that crossover, and you're not going to have that, whatever people are saying that the problems, would be. The great thing about it, I have to say, because there's always a wonderful thing about any of these things that actually happen, is that they're going through accreditation, and one of the great thing about and requirement of accreditation is this vertical alignment of the curriculum. And it was kind of difficult from going from a different campus to another, but now they're there and they'll be able to actually align then their curriculum. The other is the activities that they're planning. They're planning together to celebrate together. Like, for example, the Micronesian, week and, Mes Chamorro, all those. So, which is what educators do anyway. You see, you want to be able to do the orientation, help the children to accept the new people that are coming in, the students that are coming in. So I honestly, with the leadership that we have right now at Ocean View Middle School and the leadership at Southern High School, you're not going to see any kind of problems, actually. Teaching and learning will definitely be ongoing. And they have been very accommodating. They wanted 35 classrooms. Southern High gave them 39 classrooms. So, and a large area for like assemblies, a large area for libraries. So they have really accommodated them and are providing as much as they can to help them and make them feel, welcome on the school campus. The contingency plans for closure is that to address then alternative approaches to instructional time, that we have convened 4 working teams to facilitate the design and support the implementation of the plans related to the above options. So admin, planning, and support, this group is facilitating the planning and supporting the school team and the leadership team. 2, the teacher will be planning and supporting, where majority of our teachers also who have experience teaching an online environment. We suspect that we will still need to provide similar supports as well as new training and support if we were to utilize a combination of approaches such as online instruction and in-person instruction within the week. Access to technology is critical, and that's why we gave you the breakdown of where we at with the internet, because without the internet up and running, of course, it will become a major problem for us. So we are definitely concerned about that. We want to be able to support, and we will be able to support our students and families in building their capacity to utilize technology effectively for educational purposes. So the plan always is to work with them, provide instruction, provide guidance, to provide training. Families, of course, and our parents and our students, they do matter to us tremendously. And similar to our student support, we need to also help our parents and families also build their capacity to support their children. So we do have sufficient, how should I say that, laptops for them, and even MiFis, again, should they be needed. And as I told you earlier, when you look at the 3 different codes, it might be only for maybe, 2 weeks, or even maybe up to 2 months, and then the third will be, of course, much longer. Hopefully, that we could do a double session, meaning within the school, maybe a portion of the school, or it may mean the whole school, like Simon Sanchez, who would have to relocate, entirely. So that's the whole school. So the different types of instructional time that will be affected by the closures or the delay is that we need to agree that some FTE is still preferable, face-to-face, is still preferable to 100% online. But we also need to protect instructional time as much as possible. So when we address these matters, we need to approach it as one district and not necessarily individual schools. That will cause a confusion in the community, and also problems in the sense where you're going to pit one over the other. So we know that some schools may be fine individually, but we still need to help other schools maximize the support for all of their children. For example, in the case of double sessions. So, remember I told you earlier is that either a double session within the school or a double session with another school. And that's, definitely possible. It just depends again on the work, what the amount of recovery work that's needed at, those schools. The school communities are also very important so that we can include them, especially if we're going to do a double session, especially if we're going to, close the school. Like, for example, at the very beginning, should we not open, let's say, 2 weeks, then it doesn't mean that the children would not be learning. They would still be learning. And then at the same time, we can actually even use that time to be able to, to train our teachers as well. Because don't forget is that we do have the union contract, and we have to be able, and we still have to pay for our teachers even if we're going to start later. The options then, different options will need to be logistically feasible and rational for each, and all decisions will need to be communicated clearly, specifically if we are not able to get a consensus from our parents. So here are the half campuses or partitions, that's members still available in which we can do this, place children in different wings, have a morning session with half of the grade, then an afternoon session with the other half of the grades. A whole school would shut down the school completely and move over to another school. Now this is really critical because it's much harder for the little ones, that the in-person for all pre-K to second grade throughout the district, and double session, online, or alternating days for third grade and above. So we're very sensitive, to this, and we know that it might be harder for our younger, children to be able to go online. We also understand that parents don't have the luxury of having somebody babysitting at the home for the little ones, because then the bigger kids might be at school and the bigger kids are not going to be home to help. So there might be definitely some combination of online and in-person. Voluntary online for some and in-person for others. And the other that you asked on the last would be our barriers and hurdles, things that we are watching very closely, and things that we are really concerned about. is that, yes, the volume of work needs to be done, that needs to be done at all of the schools. It's a lot of work, and we can't do it alone when we're going to need the community to help us. Our schools have their community partners, but I know some of those partners, which are their departments and agencies, are also at the recovery stage and may not be available to help. We have this morning, as a matter of fact, in a meeting, the governor was meeting with the new admiral, and I've put in a request as well for additional help to do humanitarian services for our schools. Personnel capacity of our facilities and maintenance to address Tier 2 work also is, very timely. Procurement, which we're working very hard to make sure that we, cut all these POs, and in particular that I mentioned to you for the self-help, for carpentry, for electrical, for plumbing, and for all the supplies that the maintenance would need with our laborers to help, our workers to help. Those POs already have been cut today and some tomorrow morning. So that is definitely happening. We are sticking to a schedule with public health. We're not saying no inspections, we are. But the thing is that we need to be able to open, and the biggest hurdle for us, tomorrow, June 30th, all of our permits will expire. And therefore, it means technically, none of the schools will be open. And that's why we're continuing with, the inspection. We're not saying that it's not happening. We are going to do it. We have these liaison school liaison safety officers at the schools as well, and we're just working very diligently. I just don't want you to feel that we're being complacent, that we're not taking this very seriously. We really are. So it's not the question. There's no question at all in terms of having to put a fire behind everybody to get working. They are really working very hard. The logistical challenges that we have with multiple school closures, the distance and the time. So this is not something that we can give you right away, and I know you want to know, but we're taking all those things into consideration. It's like, you don't want a high school, and yes, we do right now, but really technically when you look at it, is that when you look at the curriculum and you look at the facilities, you look at the courses that are being offered, for high school students are slightly different from the middle schools. So it's really important is that you kind of, match them in terms of what their facility needs are. I can't put a high school with a science laboratory like in a middle school that does not have, science labs, or even to an elementary school, you can't, because as you know, everything is all very low and small for, smaller children. So those are things that we want to consider. We're looking at distance because you don't want the kids to be getting up too early in the dark and, going to school. So the staff know what to do. They're good at it. We've been doing it for many years, and trust us that we will get it done, and we're going to do the best, and then in the best interest, of course, of our children. The challenges, yes, is going to be a problem for those who have chosen then to go online. So with that, that completes my entire report based on the questions that you've asked us to provide you with. But I also have my team here. Should you have any additional questions and something more technical, they're here to give that to you. Cesar Masi.
Thank you, Acting Superintendent, for that very thorough and detailed presentation. Whole lot of very useful information. And I commend you for compiling all that. It really gives us a real good snapshot of where we're at relative to compliance with Public Law 37-4, and it's pretty clear we're still pretty far off. I just want to start, before I turn over to my colleagues, I had heard in the board meeting that you had shared that the John F. Kennedy High School had failed their public health inspection with 58 demerits. Is that accurate? 60?
We are pending the official report, but yes, unofficially they did.
Okay. And also Attica, right? And I guess I just want to start there. So these are leaseback schools. What has the conversation been relative to, um, uh, correct me if I'm wrong, but maintenance costs are included with this, right? It's all a
Yes.
package deal?
Yes, you are correct. And we have actually, my deputy finance and I had met with at least one owner, not necessarily the schools yet, but just to give you an example, because according to some of the leases that we have for the school, is that where they're responsible for will be a structural damage. And as you know, we don't have that structural damage other than FB, but that wasn't as a result of the typhoon. Because when we were just addressing, and for the very start was looking at a central office, that's what we found out. We have actually sent all of the lease agreement and the contracts rather to our legal counsel to review. There might be a window for us to get back to them again and have that conversation. I know I've spoken to, like for example, someone from, for the GIF schools, and as a matter of fact, the owner will be here next week, so that will be a good opportunity to meet with them also. And then JFK, no, I just have not, I didn't meet with the JFK owner.
We haven't obviously seen the report for John F. Kennedy High School, but I do recognize that these leaseback schools are often held up by so many people as like the gold standard, like, oh, the leaseback school, they do the maintenance, it's included, and everyone says that that's the model that we should use moving forward. So I'm just having a hard time reconciling in my mind how these leaseback schools, which again we hold up as, because everyone says GDOE maintenance, obviously have your issues, how badly did they fail these inspections, and were the demerits relative to some of the things we're seeing, which are large demerit violations, like the bathroom stall is not a certain height off the floor, or the light coverings are not in place? Was it those kind of issues, or were there more egregious violations, like relative to mold or pest infestation?
For the most part, when you look at the inspection, of course, it not just include the structure, but it actually includes, like you said earlier, a lot of it really is sanitary conditions. So let me see, I just want lucky thing I brought it with me. Let me see.
I wish you made us a copy.
Oh, well, I did, let me see, I'm trying to find out which school. Oh, no, that's not it. Oh, yeah, sorry, I don't have it because they have not written the report
So
out.
just so we know, for the record, you guys are, legal counsel's reviewing the agreements with these leaseback schools and finding out if there are gaps or if they're derelict in their duties?
Yes, and like I said earlier, when our team meet every week to do the preliminary assessment, is that we would take the schools with the high risk, that means those with, like for example, schools that got a 56, which is a D, a 66, which is a D, 60, which is a D also, and 59, which is a D. So what we do then is that our people would compile this list, categorize them by the area of that needs the supplies and materials for the self-help. But the difference here now that we were providing this for 35 schools. The leased schools, they have their own people to go in to clean their schools. They're not included in our lease agreement because the government does pay for this annually, the debt service. When we approached them about work that needed to be done in our facilities, they basically, like for example, the mold, this is what they told us, said we have the mold problem. Can you address that with your cleaning staff? And they said to us, well, you cut the PO, give us the number and the amount, and then I'll have our people go in. Meaning we were going to pay for it, not them. So it's a problem. You're right. We were just totally surprised ourselves because you're right, we were all saying the same thing, that the Lee schools were going to be better off than our own schools that we're taking care of. And that's why when you saw the list, we worked with the public health to make the Lee schools go first in the inspection with the thought that they will pass inspection. And then that way giving us time to work with the other schools that need more help.
Yeah, and I remember we had had a conversation, I don't know, was that with you or one of the deputies, that the reason why you wanted the leaseback schools inspected first is because the assumption was that they would pass, and then they would figure to be a key part in shuffling and double sessions and all that. So it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Were you able to get it?
Have we considered it all, ma'am?
Okay, so, see, he just got some of it. So the rating was 57 demerits, which is a D. And the major issues was lighting, temperature, ventilation. Those are some of the ones that he's reading off right now in the report.
Okay.
That's for JFK.
That's John F. Kennedy High School?
Yes.
Okay, right. So it does kind of sound like lighting. That's usually the diffusers or the light coverings. Yeah. Temperature, does JFK have power?
Air conditioning, yes, they do. They're one of the first schools to get water and power.
Okay. Can we go to Sanchez? So you said, correct me if I'm wrong, is it pretty clear that students of Simon Sanchez High School will not be attending the present campus up at GIGO ever again?
Oh, no. Well, you today address, the bill for the building of Simon Sanchez.
Right.
And
The existing campus, ma'am.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying, the existing campus right now for us to have our children go in seems to be a little bit more bleak, primarily because the mold situation will be so bad, because all the interior walls, remember, just think of an open building, and then all the interior walls are wet, and they're wood and also gypsum board. So, and of course, what's some of the areas there that they told us about? Oh, the wiring.
Yeah.
Also is a major problem.
That's what I mean, ma'am. I'm just saying, if we've already determined that Sanchez will be double session this year, I'm not sure how much sense it makes to go to the existing campus and try and tidy things up. So,
Yeah,
so is Sanchez
because
effectively
you're right.
dead?
So because you're right, because of the condition of Simon Sanchez as it is,
Yeah.
prior to the Typhoon, they got the highest demerit at 66, and that's actually grounds for closure. And it's a whole. I have the
Yeah, I
inspection
know. I'm familiar.
list
They
here.
weren't closed. They didn't have a sanitary
That's
permit.
true. I
Right.
mean, you are correct. So, and it has been, the problem has been exacerbated, of course, with the Typhoon. So that's why it would be best to do the double session. And because even right now, when you think about it, is that because there's an air conditioning problem at that school, the kids anyway are really almost going half day, because they have to let them off early enough before it starts to get really hot.
I just want to get on the record that Simon Sanchez, the existing campus, it's over and done with, and we're not going to see students return to that campus
Right now,
probably ever.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we can still have our guys go in to inspect, but the condition is dire.
Can we move on to, and I'm going to turn over to my colleagues, but I just wanted to, Sanchez and Ocean View Middle School. I know that you had painted a very rosy picture of the move to Southern High School, but with all due respect, ma'am, I have been, and I'm sure you have too, and I know we spoke about this a little bit, I've been bombarded and overwhelmed with communications from so many of the stakeholders in Hoggett and Ocean View Middle School community. And just long story short, they're basically saying that they're being moved from their campus, which, we know has the issues, but they're saying they're being moved to Southern, and the people I'm speaking with, it's a combination of parents and teachers and stakeholders are saying that the conditions at Southern are worse. Can we just address that? And is the decision to move the Ocean View student population over to Southern, is that final?
Yes. Last year, of course, they were supposed to move in December, and plans were made for that move. They went to the board and the former superintendent and asked if it can be delayed until summer. And so the former superintendent agreed to it. The plan was all set for it, and then now we had to revise the plan for the summer. So yes, it is. We are moving forward. They are granted that, you know, when they're saying they don't want to go from a D situation to another D situation. So I've informed basically that the administrators that the move will take place, of course, when we address all of the issues at Southern High School. I am not going to send children from one situation, a bad situation, to another. So our staff already from F&M have actually gone there, you know, to identify all the things that needed to be done based on the inspection, the public health inspection, and the work would all be done. So the supplies they should be able to get tomorrow. The people today were there cleaning, like I said earlier, and I'll show you some pictures later on. I'll forward them to you. The exact same pictures that you saw. The condition is just a complete turnaround. They've done a really great job. Southern High School staff have done a great job in preparing the school, cleaning the school, getting it ready for the middle schoolers to come in. And I have to say that one advocate of theirs, former principal of Southern High School, and the current opportunity room coordinator, whatever the new title is our former principal, Rosalind Meeks. And she herself personally met with the naysayers to just, you know, to talk to them about, you see, this move. And so, I mean, granted, maybe those were the naysayers and those that just don't want to move for whatever the reasons are. The condition right now is just the opposite of what they saw from those photos. And I'm telling you this only because I was there this morning at 9 o'clock to meet with the administrators and to tour the campus to make sure, because that's what I had promised them, that they'll move in when we addressed all of the issues, because they're not moving in to a campus that's going to be worse than where they came from.
If you could provide those photos, I mean, I'm more than happy to take your word for it, but I know that I had attempted to meet with some of these stakeholders at Southern, and that meeting was, well, they were told basically that they wouldn't be allowed on the campus. So what are the long-term plans for Ocean View Middle School? And I went down there and I met with some of the admin and a couple teachers, and so they have 2 buildings on that campus that have been condemned, correct?
No, 3.
3?
1, 2, 3, 3, which is right in front of where the gym is at, that whole area. And then at the entrance, on the left-hand side, there's about like 3 other like RATVA classrooms. That's totally unusable and not safe.
So
health-wise and
are there any discussion or any efforts, compliance efforts going to be underway at Ocean View Middle School?
Well, in the beginning, when we first did an assessment of our 35 schools, which include Ocean View Middle School, was the basic that every other school are going to get. Electrical upgrades, plumbing, the restrooms, doors and windows to be changed, you know, things of that nature. But the Typhoon has just made it worse now, where we don't have the funding for the gym that was damaged, and we don't have the money for the additional wing to be able to accommodate their population.
So, ma'am, just, you know, honestly speaking, how realistic is it to say that Ocean View Middle School has seen its last days?
No, I can't say that at all, because it just depends if monies are available, you know, to be able to go in and make those repairs and to build a whole new wing. The estimate that we got is $9 million to build that extra wing. Then there's the gym that was severely damaged. That too would have to be, you know, repaired as well.
Would it be just more economically feasible for you to close the, and I'm not making any suggestion this way, but to close the Ocean View campus? And is that part of your long-term plan to consolidate different
No, not really.
schools?
This just happened, of course, when there was, the condition has just gotten worse, and the classrooms that the government, the department has actually invested in, the last wing, I'm not sure what that wing is called, but it's the last wing of 7 classrooms, and it was the former superintendent, Fernandez,
Yeah.
who had authorized the renovation of it, put in a whole new air cons, all that, and I visited, I looked at it and saw it, and it's we can't save it. I
Okay.
thought maybe we could, but we can't.
All right. I just want to just state for the record that I do feel an obligation to meet with the Ocean View Middle School stakeholders, whoever they may be on both sides. And
I
I would just,
understand.
I would ask the new superintendent if that is something that he could consider putting on his calendar.
Yeah.
And I guess
The only problem right now is that, remember, we only have 6 weeks left.
correct, yeah.
And we cannot be vacillating back and forth.
No.
A decision
Yeah.
was made for the
I
move,
understand. I'm
and
just
we're
saying,
moving forward.
I feel like every voice needs to be heard. But, you know, you
Absolutely.
just said only 6 weeks left. And
Yeah.
I have to ask, maybe the biggest question, has the Guam Department of Education considered at all postponing the start of the 2023-2024 school year?
We've thought about it naturally, but always remember is that we're bound by several things. One is the number of instructional days that we must uphold by law. The other is we have a board union contract with the teachers that we can't just say, okay, we're going to delay school and what, you're going on vacation. We still have to pay for that. Then when you miss so many days, you still have to make up for those days, and where and when to extend the summer to be able then to, make up school days. There's a lot of problems, and I'm serious, to consider when you do this.
Right. I understand, and I know we're also bound by the Adequate Public Education Act.
Yes, absolutely.
I have a whole lot of questions, but I do want to turn it over to my colleagues now for an opportunity for them to ask, and we'll start with Senator Frank Blas Jr. Senator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, GDUA, for being here today. Now, Speaker, I'm gonna I know you as, okay? Thank you very much for the presentation. As comprehensive as it was also okay. There's a lot of questions and quite a lot, I guess, brought up more questions that I have. And then, let's start off with the ongoing, when we initially started these hearings, this was on the premise that we're trying to get the schools ready based on, pre-Marwar conditions. And those conditions pre-Marwar were already devastating in itself. Okay? So I'm going to start with there. And I know a little bit about, some of the inspections that occurred more specifically to Atacao. So I'm going to go ahead and, one of the concerns, and I guess that I had with regards to the type of inspections that were being done, first off, the inspection was being done near the end of a school year. Of course you had dirty hands and dirty feet, for the previous 9 months of the year. And that many of the public health inspection and many of the demerits that were provided to Atacao were primarily your wear and tear that you would expect when you have kids running around for 9 months. Okay? Pretty surprised that they got a demerit for a marker mark on a desk, in a kindergarten class. Really? Okay? And then some of the demerits were based on the structural design of the school. That the school had first off, how did it pass to begin with? And then you turn around and get inspected and get a demerit for something that the teachers nor GDOE in itself had any control of. So one of the, I guess, things that I would like to ask is based on your future inspections, is that, you know, we sit down with public health and, okay, let's go through your criteria as to how you're going to inspect our schools. You know, I have some question with regards to, again, the maintenance that was supposed to have been done on that school, you know, as well as the other schools. And I appreciate the discussion that we had earlier, that you had earlier, that you're going to review this. Because I think that, again, I'm going to speak because of my knowledge of you know, the school like Attica. Okay, your mold issues that you have up there is because of course you got your building design. You got an air conditioning system that, you know, was continuously problematic. Just the design itself of the school with no ventilation, it's going to cause, you know, condensation and buildup of you know, the water to create the mold. Then you got bodies coming in and out of there. The doors constantly opening and closing, so you've got a drastic change in climate and atmosphere in the schools. It's going to cause a problem. Okay, and that's a structural design. That's a structural flaw. I don't know how that is not an issue that, you know, the contractor, you know, the owners of the building are saying that's not their problem. That is their problem. So I would really, when you're looking and going back and talking to the attorneys and everything, I think one of the things you should seriously look at is look at the structural designs of the schools and how it was made, and go back to a lot of the issues, you know, that exist. Okay, you know, earlier today we were having a discussion about Simon Sanchez and how to be able to, you know, to fix that contract so we can get it moving. And one of the major discussions we had in there was about whether, you know, GDOE is going to be paying for the maintenance and the repair of school equipment. And I'm like, you know, I don't know how many times I have to buy my wife different, you know, pieces of furniture in there, and then it gets ruined because of the condensation and the mold that exists in the schools. All right? And so I think that we need to be able to look at that. But, you know, I guess the million-dollar question that a lot of people that are listening or are watching this show or watching this hearing tonight is, when are we going to know what we need to know before 6 weeks comes up? In other words, do you have any decision timelines, so that you can decide? You know, I appreciate that you've got 3 different levels of, is it 3? See, we got black and white color. I appreciate the color that you put up on the, okay? No red, no yellow, and okay? So I had to look up and say, what are you referring to? Okay? But, you know, when you say you've got the different tiers of the schools, you know, schools that can be open within this, you know, on time or a couple weeks, and schools that can be open in 3 months, or schools that won't be open in 3 months. When will we make that determination so that you can move on to the next one? I guess the thing is, you know, with 6 weeks, I know the hoops that teachers have to go through just to try to prepare, you know, your online lessons and whatnot, and all the other concerns that they have. So when can we expect to hear about this, or at least your community, your stakeholders, to hear about these plans, to hear about these, about whether or not they're going to show up to school or they're going to have to be online?
Yeah, there's several things you brought up. The very first thing, and I'm glad you really brought it up, is in your comments about you know, some of the equipment that we have in the schools. And if there's anyone who really know exactly what, you know, will pass in the schools, are our school principals. Just today, in my conversation with, you know, the Southern High School, you know, principal, and he brought to my attention looking at the SOPs for public health to go out and inspect our schools. One example, I was trying to find the page here, but one example is exactly what you just said about a desk. You know, as a former school principal, when I order collateral equipment, I want to get the ones that are not the pressed wood, because I know that as soon as they get wet, it's no longer usable. I know also that those kinds of tables, because you have the laminate on top, if you get a little chip on the corner, that already will get a demerit for that from public health. So the best type of desks that normally I like to buy will be the ones that are the hardcore plastic that won't chip, won't warp. But guess what? If the rack on the bottom for the books is missing, they get a demerit for that. So definitely, senators, is that this is what I've already asked my deputies to do, is to go have the principals go through this and really be very reasonable and realistic about this, you know, the SOPs, and come down to the legislature and ask you to amend it. Because if you don't amend this, we're going to continually be getting those demerits when many of those collateral equipment are really usable. Just because the rack is gone from the bottom, that desk is no longer usable. It just doesn't make sense. So one of the things that I was going to do, that I spoke with my people, the project leads, and under consolidated grant, is that we can't buy desks with the federal dollars, primarily because we're supplanting. However, so we have to be creative about this. And one of the greatest things that we have, of course, and which we don't even do normally unless you're in a science lab and you have one of those tables where you have two students maybe sharing that table, that science table. Well, why can't we do that as well for student desks, but not necessarily categorize it as a desk? And that's being creative in the description of something that we can buy for our classrooms to be able to use. But then again, I don't want public health to turn around and say, well, that's not an individual desk because now you have two students there. There's a lot of things. I just read this again, which is good, that they're not going to cite us in temperature because the 14 point says 70 degrees. This one says 75 to 83. And I spoke to an engineer just 2 weeks ago, and he told me that just by raising it up 1 degree saves us hundreds of dollars, you know, for the power bills. But I'm sorry, but I know what it's like. I was in this legislature for 18 years. I know that when we want to get legislation, we look elsewhere and we copy and paste, and sometimes we make a mistake and you see the state there that's not supposed to be there. That's the exact same thing with the SOPs, because they're not designed for Guam, for tropic weather. And that's why we need to seriously look at this. I can't do this by tomorrow, but I'm telling you this now because it is definitely something that has to be done. My principals will be able to compile all that information and then be able to present it to you so that hopefully you'll be able to amend the SOPs or the rules and regs.
Right.
Timeline now? Okay. We have established those 3 color codes as to when we're going to open. We know we need to make that decision sooner rather than later. So what we're doing, because in some of our schools we can't go in yet because they have no power for us to determine really whether that school is can open in 2 weeks, or that school would be open 2 months later, or a school that will be open after 3 months. But we're getting the assessment every week. And I know that with the next set of assessments already, we're not telling you right now because we haven't solidified our plans. But we have an idea already. We have an idea of which schools actually will not open in 3 months, okay? But I'm not going to put it out there because I don't want anyone to panic yet, because we still are doing the assessment. We're working hard with all the supplies that we're going to be getting now, that from all the POs that we cut, $240,000 for all the different disciplines, and our guys go in there, and then we get skilled laborers to help us. Then will we really know which schools, then whether maybe any of those schools that we already in our minds are saying to ourselves that it's not going to open 3 months 3 months after school opens on August 7th, then we can share that with you. But we know the urgency, and we are working diligently on it because we have only 6 weeks left to get ourselves ready.
I appreciate that, and I can appreciate your enthusiasm and I guess your optimism in this, okay? And I would hope that I can share that optimism, ma'am, but I really can't, and it's not to your fault, okay? You know, the external factors that exist that you have to contend with. Again, prior to Typhoon, this was already a challenge in itself to get yourselves all prepared because of the public health issues. Now you compound this with, you know, a typhoon. And, you know, I know that what we want to do is we want to focus on the facility, but I think that I guess the mindset I'm looking at is, I think we better focus on the student and how we're going to be able to accommodate and start to get them into the learning. Because if we focus too much, you know, again on the infrastructure, okay, you're going to run into a lot of issues. You say it in your report. Some of your schools don't have power or water. Your internet system is down. The internet system is down all over the place. We have to deal with that in this hall. Then you got the accessibility to the internet. You know, how many of your students have got access? If you were to say that X number of students or these number of students have to, you know, go online to be able to do this, how many of them have that ability to do this? Then also, now the parents, because now if they're going to go online, now the parents have got to worry about where they're going to put their kids or who's going to take care of their kids. Okay, and while 6 weeks sounds like a lot so that you can prepare your infrastructure, it's really not a lot to be prepared mentally for it. And that's my concern in this, okay? And I appreciate all the efforts in being able to try to get your schools back up on, you know, in as far as, you know, passing public health inspections and whatnot. And I'll get to that again. But also, you know, cleaning up the mess done by the typhoon. I think that if we focus then too on the student learning, okay, taking care of the school, the infrastructure will just fall in place.
So I'm going to have my deputy, I'm going to make him work now.
Good.
So
Okay, Joe, you know my number. Give me a
question.
call. Okay, when you have a problem. And I appreciate that. That's why I'd like to be able. My suggestion is to focus on that because GDOE. I'm sorry, but GDOE, like, you know, the roads, you know, the mayor's council and whatnot. You all got challenges when you're dealing with this typhoon recovery, okay? And there's not enough resources right now to be able to get things done, most especially in 6 weeks, okay? I just don't want us to get right up there and then to find out we're not ready, and then we have a panic because parents don't know whether their students are going to go to school. Students don't know how they're going to learn, and teachers don't know how they're going to teach. Okay? So if we can focus on that, that would be, I would truly appreciate that. With regard to you know, your supplies and stuff. Or, let's get into the bigger things. Obviously, you've had damages to the schools that were typhoon related, okay? And do we have a team that has been set up so that we can work closely with, you know, the disaster, with Homeland Security and with FEMA?
Yes, we do. We actually, as we noted kind of in the beginning, we've divided our operations into typhoon recovery as well as public health inspections and school readiness. So we have teams, and these are all the same people. They just kind of overlap when it comes to their function. Chris Anderson's been our go-to guy for all of our requests that go to Homeland Security and Office of Civil Defense. So what we do, we've really merged the work of public health and our typhoon recovery into kind of like one working group. We continue to do the assessments. We continue to look at the tiers of the work. Tier 2 is actually the section that has us working with Homeland Security and our other government agencies. So that's where we put in a lot of our requests. We put in all of our coordination efforts through that particular group. Our Tier 1 group, I just want to point out, is a really big part of the whole plan. Because if you go to the schools, if you talk to our principals, they're very resourceful. And a lot of times they look at us and they just tell us, look, just give us our supplies and we'll take care of it. We don't want to wait for you. And we get it, you know, and I think that's one step that's been very good is that this week we expect to get a major part of our purchase orders out to them, which means they're going to actually get the supplies and materials that they need to do the Tier 1 work. If I can just add to what Dr. Judy was saying about the school readiness, is we've been working on this classification set, the green, yellow, and red. Sorry, that's black and white on your sheet. But the criteria of what each mean is going to be really important. I'll give you an example. We did an exercise where we tried to define Tier 3 or the red as, okay, do you have damage that can only be addressed by a contractor? And is that damage substantive enough that it's going to keep you from opening? How many schools are in that condition? And it varied from 6 to 7, or 6 to 10. And we said, wow, okay, that's a pretty decent variance, right? We're glad that it's 10, because what we know by definition, if it's a Tier 3 issue, we can't deal with it. It needs to be a contractor. So if a contractor needs to do it, we need to consider procurement time, 6 to 8 months, and we need to consider the time it takes to do the work. So if a school is in the red, chances are that school's not going to open for more than a year, maybe even 2. So we're being very careful about that definition, and we're going to say, if you're going to claim that you have to close down because of a Tier 3 issue, let's make sure that we do all the Tier 1, and let's make sure, I'm pointing to Chris because he's coordinating Tier 2 stuff, and let's do all the Tier 2, because let's do everything we can to open that school based on the things that we can control so that we don't end up with a long-term closure. And right now, I know that we don't want to panic, but what we're concerned about is if we look at that red number, if that red category goes up to 15 to 20 schools, double session is just out the door. It's like, how are we going to double session from these villages to these villages? It's just really, really difficult to do. But if it's around 10, and then we have a green and yellow, we can handle that. We believe we can handle the double sessions or what Dr. Wampat alluded to where, and we're going to have to coordinate this with public health. If only a portion of the school is what needs to be shut down, can we just shut down that part, close it off, and then if we need to, we'll double session within the same school? Because I think the resounding opinion of a lot of folks based on COVID is that get as much face-to-face as possible. If you have to do a little online, okay, do it a couple of days, but the kids need to be physically on campus as much as possible. So that's kind of the dilemma we're at. If you were to push us to give a date as to when we can come up with a final decision, probably 2 weeks, because we meet with our principals next week. We're trying to massage the criteria for the tiers. We're going to ask them to go back to their schools to utilize the criteria and then come back to us and give us a determination. We have some principals here who, that's why that communication with them is really important, because our facilities folks, we actually sent a list out and we said, hey, based on this criteria, some of you might not open. And the principal came back saying, what are you talking about? We're good, we can open. We're like, okay, if there's that discrepancy, we want to make sure that we both understand what the definitions are, what the criteria are, and then it's like a collaborative effort to make sure that we agree on where you are, because as you can see, it's not, it's a serious decision to say that you're in the red. To close down a school for more than a year is a tough call.
And I appreciate it, if it's going to be, you're looking at about 2 weeks because, like you said, Speaker, yeah, 6 weeks is not a time to be able just to, diddle-daddle, on this thing. And you'd be amazed that, first off, I don't think anybody's going to fault any of you for saying that, this is the worst case scenario, we're working down from it. Okay? Is the whole thing here is so that we don't, granted, it's one thing to be able to not panic, the employees. I think it's all more so don't panic the community, don't panic the parents and the students. Give them time to prepare, so that if you do say that, let's say you're gonna have to go online, give the parent enough time to find out, is it possible for my child to be able to go online? Do I have those issues? Where can I go to be able to address those issues, so that when you do have, when school does start, their child can go online? Okay. Again, there's a lot of times and I appreciate and I recognize the focus on trying to get the infrastructure up, but I think that also we have to recognize that, behind that infrastructure is the children, is the teaching that needs to get done. Okay, and let's start with our worst case scenario. And going back to, Madam Speaker, with regard to the public health inspections and how they inspect and everything, my suggestion is have your, Mr. Anderson, sit down with public health and says, okay, what's this criteria? What are you using, as your criteria? And let's be reasonable about it. One of the things I found, in dealing with public health and environmental, with Tom and do and everything, I've had some, experience in trying to deal with those folks with regards to their inspections. And yes, one of the things I question is, how is that, what you want to inspect, or how is that demerit, with regard to the conditions, our conditions on Guam, how does that fit? Or is this, some criteria that you've taken from a national standard or whatnot? You'd be amazed, okay? And how understanding and accommodating they can be with that. That's why granted, I recognized, with regard to Atacao, I knew they had issues. But then when I saw some of the demerits as to, with what, where they got demerits from, I'm like, really? Especially, 9 months after school, through a school year. And, I tell you what, not even had you to prepare the school as best you can prepare a school at the end, at the start of a school year, would you not have any of those demerits based on what you were looking for? Okay, based on the conditions here. Well, that's one of my suggestions that I have here with regard to that. Other than that, good luck. I know you got a major task and undertaking, and sir, sitting back there, welcome to Guam. Viva. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, gentlemen.
If I may, Senator, just to add some information, I do want to, Deputy Superintendent Cruz is out sick today, but she meets regularly with public health, and I do want to kind of recognize the relationship that we have with public health. They meet weekly, and they actually do what you just said. They go through all of the different criteria. In fact, as noted earlier in the report, public health actually trained our school safety liaisons in December and showed us how to use the criteria for our self-inspections. So our self-inspections are actually being conducted right now, and there's another set of self-inspections that should be coming out within 2 weeks. And what sometimes turns out is sometimes the schools are even harder on ourselves when we do that self-inspection, because we want to make sure that they align with what public health inspections are when they actually come on campus. So I just want to say that there is that relationship. We do have a team that works directly with public health. We do clarify the criteria, and they've also been very accommodating when it comes to the submission of variances. I don't want to speak in detail, but we are allowed to submit requests to public health to get certain variances for things that are really out of our control. Again, I don't know any specifics at this point, but I know that we've submitted quite a number for their review, and they've been pretty accommodating, at least in their understanding of why we can't address certain things. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Senator Joanne Brown?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Certainly good evening to all of you. I know it's been a challenge just dealing with if we didn't have the typhoon, just the current challenges DOE is experiencing, and certainly the growing expectation of our community, to want to have these issues addressed. I think the most basic thing we want to provide is a safe, clean environment for our students with quality teachers in the classroom teaching. I'm a little concerned, and I'm just going to call you superintendent because I know you have so many titles. Dr. Judy Wampat, Speaker Judy Wampat, Principal, Teachers Judy Wampat. I'm a little concerned, and I especially the issue with regards to the schools that we currently pay for maintenance and cleaning of the schools, like JFK. And I just wanted to ask, of the schools that you have listed here, which ones are the ones we have these contractual agreements with?
We have, JFK is the first one, and then we have Okadu High School, Atticao Elementary, Tijan, you're right, High School, one more, middle school. Estumbo Middle School, and Liguan Elementary School. Those are our lead schools.
Who maintains supervision at DOE to oversee these contracts to make sure they're delivered upon? I mean, if you have them, like in the case of JFK, I'm just a little more familiar because I was at DPW when JFK was reconstructed. Who verifies that the work under the contract is being delivered? Who does that? I mean, is it just within the individual schools, or is there anyone from Central that...
the school principal who will contact the managers to let them know if there are any repairs or damages to the school, and they would be the ones to address it. And they also provide custodial and ground maintenance. So we don't address any of those issues with our workers. They're just strictly with the owners.
But is there anyone from DOE administration on a regular basis that goes over that or coordinates with the principals just to make sure that the services that we're paying for are being delivered? Because it is concerning, and I don't know, I mean, was JFK, for example, was it just recently inspected after the typhoon versus prior? I mean, which of these schools that were inspected, were they inspected prior to the typhoon, or are the inspections you're listing here after the typhoon?
No, all of our schools really have gone through the inspection, but since April, what we did is, in working with public health, is that they asked us to list the schools that we want them to inspect. And like I said, in the beginning, we thought that all of the leased schools were going to be able to pass. And then those that we knew were going to have some problems, then we put them further down the list so we can continue to work with the school administration and the staff with our facilities and maintenance workers. But to our surprise, we found out that that wasn't, the case.
And that's my point. I mean, like JFK, was that inspected prior to the typhoon or after?
After.
I know you're
No, this one, the one that we just did, yes, after.
And how about any of the other schools?
But prior to the typhoon, it was Oceanville Middle School and Southern High School, and also Simon Sanchez High School.
Okay, but except for JFK, none of the other ones
You're
so
right.
far are part of these
they came
contractual
after.
agreements for maintenance? None of the other schools so far that have been inspected are part of the contractual agreements for maintenance? The rest of these schools have yet to be inspected then?
Yes.
Do we know, I mean, I know you have, I've seen some of the previous reports and they're quite lengthy, but what are the main reasons? Because I would be concerned. I mean, we were just debating the bill for Simon Sanchez, the ongoing, saga of Simon Sanchez with the expectation to also include maintenance contracts. And if that's not going to address our concerns, then I don't know what we're doing, because we're spending an awful lot of money. We want to make sure that there's a return on that. And what are the reasons as to why that's not happening? Then we heard for Teason, for example, what was said during one of the previous meetings is that, well, these issues of mold don't fall into their list of responsibilities because it's not structural. But, then I'm wondering, how's water getting into a classroom? So I just think we'd want to make sure that with these contractual agreements that they are actually delivering on what we had agreed to and what we are paying for, because otherwise, we think we're getting a Cadillac and we're not getting a Cadillac. We're getting an old used car that isn't all running. So that is concerning. If this is not going to be the golden arrow here, then what is?
There is a chat in which, of course, all the schools will submit requests if there's any damages or they need supplies, and the Lee schools are also part of it, but they do not put down any requests for facilities and maintenance because they have to go through their own, the owners of their own school. So unless, I know one time they did tell us that they had not gotten some toiletry supplies and have asked whether we could share those supplies with them, but not in terms of maintenance of the facility. That's strictly with the owners of the school.
Well, I think that needs to be looked at, and I think it needs to be segregated between what we would look at as what falls under the contractual agreements for delivery and whether they've done that or not, or whether they're following through with that. Because if this is not the solution, if your Southern High School, not your Southern High School, but your school in Arahan, can at least meet a passing grade and they're not a leased school, then I'm like, well, do we go back and reinvest in our own school where there's a sense of community and ownership? When I was going to elementary school and junior high school, we knew who our principal was, we knew who our servers were in the cafeteria, we used to call them parapros, we knew who our parapros were, we knew who our custodial people were. And I don't know if that's the solution, because I'm a little concerned now. This is not the magic bullet for us then. If we're seeing these leased schools, that are supposed to have better ability to do procurement and everything else, are not doing it. That's concerning, and I don't think it's going to be anything we're going to resolve this evening, but I think something has to be done to do further review on what exactly led to those schools not passing with regards to physical infrastructure and the maintenance of that infrastructure. Another thing that I had asked the Director of Public Works last week was whether or not he's been any discussion with Department of Education concerning the possibility of double sessions beyond what they're currently providing capacity for, to which he responded, he has not had such conversations. So has DOE had these conversations with DOE and the possibility, or with Public Works on the possibility you may be increasing any additional school for double session, and whether or not Department of Public Works, who also has limited capacity of bus drivers and buses, is going to be able to accommodate such a schedule?
Excuse me. One of our schools, I had reached out to one of the departments who have adopted one of our schools, excuse me, and I reached out anyway, I won't say who it is, and they said they can't do it, but they just happened to be in a meeting this morning with the new admiral, with DPW, the National Guard, and because of my request to help this school, and because of their inability to do it, he mentioned it at the meeting this morning with the governor and her cabinet members, and immediately responded and said that DPW and the National Guard then are going to be asked to help the schools.
Well, I certainly
And that was just this morning.
There's my child calling me. I'm already getting those calls, and he's not 8 yet. I just think, again, we just need to look at whether or not it's physically possible to have the infrastructure to do it. And great, I understand you're putting all efforts forward to try and address what you can under the circumstances, and it's overwhelming. I think this is not a very good situation to be in. I mean, especially if within the next month we're going to be hearing which schools cannot open for whatever reason and whatever the delay is. Because I mean, to hear that whole wings cannot be occupied or entirety, to find out this evening of Simon Sanchez not even being a possibility is significant, and the impact is significant, certainly to address the concerns that you've raised with regards to ensuring the amount of time students need to actually have instructional time.
And just to also let
Sure.
you know that this morning, and I know this, I haven't seen it in all the other schools, but I know this morning at Southern High School, I saw 4 military personnel actually helping at the schools with scraping, painting, and cleaning of the sort. And because of the Admiral being there, we also got word that there has been a request for the military to come in to help, and under the title, of course, of humanitarian services for the schools. So most definitely already that we're hoping now, and I've asked Chris to follow through with Charles Esteves, who's going to be working closely with the National Guard, DPW, and hopefully other military personnel to help the schools.
One other thing, Mr. Chairman, I just want to relay, and I know that we're probably going to need, I don't know if you had requested public health, but we definitely would need to have this dialogue with public health. I mean, I think we can look at what's fair and reasonable for safety of the kids. I mean, if it's a marker on a table, I think we know what our opinion of that is, that that's not fair and reasonable, but I think we need to, that might take a little longer in terms of evaluating the standards that they look at a school. I mean, the issues of, rodent infestation and mold and those other serious things that we would like to see addressed certainly don't fall into the rank of a little chip on a desk or, a marker on a table. But I think that's a dialogue we need to have. And I mean, it's one government. The governor has her cabinet, and I think that's something that needs to be discussed so that we're also fair and reasonable in trying to facilitate. Because public health has come and told us, they've given these this is what they've told us. They've given these orientations to DOE about what's needed with regards to these inspections. And I don't know if that's adequate. I don't know if the changes, where that has led, is that adequate enough for you? Is there an open enough dialogue with the limited time and resources?
So we did. The Lieutenant Governor had called a meeting with the Director of Public Health and Tom Nadeau. Erica and I were in the same meeting because our concern was when we were looking at the dates in which they're going to go out and inspect the schools, just calculating how many schools, how long it would take them to do an inspection and write up a report. They would not finish the last school until November. Mm-hmm. So we had that meeting because we needed then the assistance of the governor and the lieutenant governor at the time when he was the acting governor, was to be able to bring additional individuals in so that we can create more teams. Right now, they only have a team of 6 individuals doing the inspections. And we were looking and encouraging to try to get, additional teams of inspectors to go out. I honestly I didn't follow through, to see whether anybody else have been recruited. But that's something definitely I know that the deputy, Erica Cruz, will follow through.
Well, again, I'm sure those are follow-up discussions we're going to need to have, and I appreciate you bringing it to light. You have a tremendous job, and yet, our job, our job is to make sure that, the schools are delivering what they need to do, and sometimes we're going to be direct and harsh because there's an expectation our community has, and you know that. You've been on enough sides of the aisle to recognize that. So I do wish you well. I mean, I'm very critical, but I am always hopeful that as a result of bringing these issues to light and focusing attention on them, that we can work on them, because this is not where we want our schools to be. We can't be literally dropping off the cliff, and that's the option. I mean, it can't be between feast and famine, and that's how we're running our school system. And I know you know that. I mean, I don't need to preach that to you, but the information provided this evening is very concerning, but I appreciate you being candid with regards to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to ask these questions and comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Brown. Senator Tello-Taitigui.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, I've never been one to want to be in between somebody's dinner, so I'm going to make this very quick. to the point. My colleagues asked a lot of the questions, and I thank you, everyone who's still sitting here today. I appreciate your time and your hard work. Speaker Wampat, you mentioned, or Dr. Wampat, you mentioned $14 million earlier about the cost. What is that in pertaining to, the $14 million?
That came from our preliminary damage assessment when our people went out to the schools. And those are like doors, windows that would have to be replaced, carpets, equipment.
Is that all schools?
A whole bunch of items, you're right.
Is that all schools?
Yes, all
Okay,
schools.
do you have the $14 million?
Yeah, no, we don't.
Okay, what happened to the federal funds that were, set aside that you?
Those are strictly for the 35 schools to,
Okay.
As part of our CIP, which
Okay.
is roofing, spalling, electrical, plumbing, the changing all the restrooms, changing the doors.
Okay.
And that's, like I said, the larger CIP projects.
Right.
But because we
the
have
damage
lost
from the type,
doors,
yeah.
right, from the storm,
Right.
we need now monies not from the ARP to do that because, like I mentioned earlier, the IFBs have gone out for the 4 regions. And right now there is still pending 2 regions.
Okay. Now, how are you planning on trying to get the 14 million?
Well, first of all, what we were instructed, maybe Chris can help me here, is that we would have to put this on the DLAN request, what it is that we need. The very first, the top of the list is a mold mitigation, which we said is approximately maybe anywhere between 6 to 13 million. This, we also put in a request for the fencing to replace or to rebuild.
Okay.
The third is the request for experts to help us in terms of manpower and resources.
So
to
you're
help.
going through the federal
So
government,
all that's
right?
going on to
Okay.
DLAN. By having it in DLAN,
Okay.
and as you know, with the Governor's Transfer Authority,
Right.
that she would be able to use the monies to actually address, because they're making DOE a priority.
Okay.
And they would upfront that with local monies. It will be part then of the FEMA request to get reimbursement
Right.
at 75%.
Okay, at 75, right? 75%, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. With regards to funding, the schools that have lease back, are any of them have to have insurance? Okay, they have to have insurance, correct? If they're a lease back school, has any of these individuals who are leasing from collected any money from any insurance from the typhoon damage?
That I don't know.
Okay, you need to find out because they all are required insurance whenever any of these leasebacks. And if they're starting to claim and they're not fixing the schools like they're supposed to in the contract, the agreement on the maintenance, but yet they're making claims at an insurance company, you got to find out.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
please look into that one. The other one is repairs, public health. Has public health added any additional evaluations or compliance other than what's already on their plate? Have they added any additional? Like all of a sudden they want to add something else without even...
No, they're strictly following, and they do have their form
A
here.
list, okay.
And then they have their rules and regs, but...
They're not adding anything else, like, right?
No,
right,
no, they
okay.
haven't. But
That's all I need to know.
But the one thing great, though, I have to say
Yeah.
this, though, is that because we have submitted, requests for variances, which means that, that we will not get a demerit for that request. An example is that we could get a demerit if we didn't have screens on our windows, so we would request for those in advance, so therefore all of our schools who don't have screens would not get, a demerit. The other would be the drop ceiling, where they are requiring the smooth drop ceiling rather than what we currently have, which are the ones that are kind of rough. And there's a major difference in price as well, because for us it's cheaper to use the other, the cheaper quality at almost at 40 cents each, versus spending $5 on the smoother ones, and we put in a variance for that as well. So there are others. We have about 100 variances already that has been approved.
Okay, thank you. And last question. So you're closer to dinner, everybody. Last question on this section here where it said TB to be announced. When are we going to know? I mean, when are you going to get close to giving us a timeline on this TB?
We're looking at 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And again, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it and looking forward to the next opportunity to follow up on some questions. Okay,
Thank you, Senator Titagui. And thank you again, Acting Superintendent, for the very thorough report. It's pretty obvious that we're going to have to follow up in a few weeks, and it'll be with the new superintendent. Unless are you staying on in any capacity relative to education, whether it be with GDOE or the front office that you can share?
No, nothing at all. I'm on a plane on July 4th.
Okay, right on. I just wanted to, because I know you had mentioned that the open POs, and this is the principal's wish lists. Is that coming out this week? Because I know you know this, I've said this in every hearing, is that even when I was at, well, I don't want to say what school, but I was at one of the schools a couple weeks ago, and just the complaints again about they note the problems, they know what they need at the school level, they send it up in the munis or whatever, they run it up the flagpole to DOE Central, and I hear time and time again that it just goes there and dies, basically. And I've heard the same with the principal's wish list. In fact, I just had a PTO call me a couple days ago because they had submitted their list and they were told that not all the principals had done that, but there was opportunities where, especially at this school, you have an organization that utilizes the sports facilities at this school, and they were absolutely willing to, paint and do whatever they had to do, but they missed that opportunity because they didn't have the supplies and the materials that they were supposed to come from you guys. So
and you are correct and in terms of what they have told you. But I will tell you this, is that today at least the POs for $240,000 for carpentry, electrical, and plumbing supplies. Tomorrow morning we should have what we call for the self-help, buckets, mops, rollers, paints, things of that nature. So guaranteed tomorrow, they should be able then to, once we send out the POs to those vendors, then we should be able to get those supplies for the schools. And that's what we were really pushing hard on, because when we are able to do the self-help, then it helps us to quickly decide which schools then will be green, yellow, or red.
right, and this is a great resource, the PTOs and everybody that's going to use this. They call it happy labor. And that's how Inalahan Elementary was able to pass their inspection. And I think I keep saying the PTOs and these other, non-GDOE employee kind of stakeholders are very crucial in bringing us into compliance, because they're so willing and they're invested in the schools, right? And they just want the paint, they want the stuff. So if we got, you're sure then that's coming out this week?
Tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you very
Yes.
much. Yeah, and so that's kind of been the narrative, even up to as recent as a couple days ago. And had that not been the narrative, and had the narrative instead been that, when we tell management what we need to come into compliance, we get it right away, I might have been more willing to entertain the resolution that was sent down from the board. But I think it's pretty clear that as far as I see it, it's really a case of now or never, right? I don't think, even absent Public Law 37-4, I'm not even sure that public schools would be able to open on time anyway. And so I really think that
You are correct, yeah.
yeah, we just take this time that we have now, and I know that some of my colleagues on here might not be as optimistic as I am or as you are, but I am optimistic because Typhoon Mawar, in its own strange way, has brought some blessings in that now we're able to avail of, Homeland and Civil Defense and a lot of these opportunities that we would never have been able to use if not for Typhoon Mawar. And so I know that with the debris and the guard going around the schools, I'm so encouraged by that. I'm encouraged also by the mold mitigation work that's going to be taken care of. And I understand in speaking with Mr. Esteves that there are other DLAN tickets
Yes.
in the works to help, not necessarily bring you into compliance with Public Law 37-4, but to do things that need to be done that coincidentally will also lead us closer to compliance. So I'm very encouraged by those things. I'm also encouraged that there's a possibility of us being able to extend our dollars via reimbursements from FEMA. So I know that it's a challenging situation. I know that it's difficult. I know that there is this conversation where I'm pretty sure management and the board is looking to me to make some kind of determination about whether or not it introduced something to suspend Public Law 37-4, but I think as I sit here tonight, I'm not going to do that. I'm very confident in the leadership of GDOE, but even more confident in the rank and file employees who support this measure and they support this effort that we put forth with this public law. And I'm very encouraged by all of these moving parts. And I know we're 6 weeks out, but I want to check in a few weeks when you've made the determination about which schools are going to be in the red. And I would just say that we need to move quickly with our contingency plans because 6 weeks is coming fast, right? And relative to sanitary permits expiring on June 30th.
June 30th.
Right. I'm of the opinion that our students shouldn't be going to schools that can't even get a sanitary permit. And I'm very firm on that. And I think that when we talk about the kind of education our children deserve, that is one of the most basic tenets that I'm not really willing to budge on because I believe that when we send our kids to schools in facilities that can get a sanitary permit, then that clears the way for them to be engaged in learning, and then we can talk about the academics and we can talk about the learning loss, but we can't hold our students to this high standard that we ourselves are not willing to live up to. So I want to thank you for your service. Looks like you have something to say.
Yes, I do, because, I mean, you recognize the date that June 30th is when our sanitary permit expires. And what that means is that unless a school is inspected and passes inspection, no one is allowed on the campus with the exception only of its own employees. So the children in 6 weeks, if they're even going to be working as fast as they could, that's only 6 schools that they would visit. Hopefully they've passed. Therefore, the rest of the 35 schools would not be able to receive any of the school children. That's why you got that resolution.
Yeah. No, I understand.
And if nothing is done, of course, then I can honestly tell you, we can't then really, because of the lack of a permit, we can't open schools. Not just because of its condition, but the mere fact that we don't have a sanitary permit to enter.
And I would just again say that I don't think our students deserve to go to schools in facilities that can't even get a basic sanitary permit, and that's where we're at. And so I want to thank you for your service, Acting Superintendent. I've always, I've looked up to you in your career as one of our elected leaders, and so I did appreciate being able to rub elbows with you for this short time. I did pick up a lot just from the conversations that we've had, and I know tomorrow's your last day, so just on behalf of the people of Guam, I know you came into a very difficult situation, but I'm very impressed and I'm encouraged in a lot of the organization and the organizing that you and your team have done to kind of set the table. I think we're still a little early, and we definitely want these answers about which schools are going to be green, which schools are going to be yellow, which schools are going to be red, because I agree with Senator Blas. I don't think it's really about panicking people. I think that everybody knows what's going on here, and they just want the most information, the earliest they can get it, so that we can kind of plan our lives around it, right? And I appreciate it again, and I'm thankful for your service, and good luck. Thank you. And so I want to thank your management team as well. Yes, Joe?
I'm so sorry, Senator. I don't want to belabor this point, and please, with all due respect, we just want to clarify that one point, because when we met, there seems to be a discrepancy in how you're interpreting the law versus how public health is instructing us. What we're being told by public health is that if we don't get inspected, regardless of what we do, we can't open. And that's where I think we have a concern about that. We're not saying to delay the inspections. We're not saying to give us a waiver for the inspections. What we're asking is that for those schools who, because they cannot logistically be inspected yet, can those open without being inspected yet? I guess that's the point. because even though we do believe that there are 10 schools, roughly 7 to 10 schools that might be in the red, we also luckily, fortunately, have a bunch of schools that think they can open. And it would be really a travesty if those schools could not open simply because there was not enough time to inspect them.
I agree. It's totally a
that's kind of the
travesty
point
that
we're
because of
concerned about.
government ineptitude and incompetence, that public health wouldn't, and manpower shortages, whatever the case may be, that they wouldn't be able to conduct these inspections. And, I wanted to sit down with you guys and find out what page we're on with the Guam Department of Education. And I know that we'll be sitting down with the Department of Public Health, hopefully with the blessing of the committee chair, to find out, what we can do, if anything, to accelerate that process or, work with it. And so, yeah, I think that we've been very reasonable. We passed this bill, it was signed into law, and we have done so many different things to help enable you. I mean, we even passed a measure giving you emergency procurement. We shortened the protests for any procurements. We appropriated $20 million. So we have given the money, and we have tried to help you with the procedures and the process that you guys have said were hindering you in compliance with this public law. So we've done our part. We just ask that you continue to do yours, and then we'll check in again in a few weeks, and we'll see where we're at then. But I would just say, please prepare those lists and start working on your contingency plans now. It is what it is, and parents, they've got to work their lives around this, and so do our students. And I know that you guys understand where I'm coming from. If we just have to do this now. I don't think that we open the schools if they're not ready to be opened, and we just have to deal with it. And I think if we undergo this effort, we bring all of our public schools into compliance, then it's set it and forget it. And we can all focus on what the public school system should really be focusing on, and that's the academics and turning out great students for the future of our island. So again, I thank you for your attendance here. Also thank the new superintendent. I hope he's not going to the airport right after this. But thank you again for your attendance here. And this concludes this oversight hearing of the Committee on Education, Public Safety, and the Arts. The time is 8:08, Chamorro Standard Time. Guahusi, Senador Chris Malafunction Barnett, está adios.